When the Treaty of Bajor was signed and the Dominion War ended in 2375, Dominion forces withdrew back to the Gamma Quadrant, the Cardassian Union had collapsed, and the Klingon Empire was expected to spend the next decade rebuilding from its losses. This left the United Federation of Planets and the Romulan Star Empire as the two major players on the political stage of the Alpha Quadrant. While a fragile alliance had been maintained between the two powers during the war, now that their common enemy had been defeated, there were several on the Federation Council worried that the Romulans might take the opportunity to lure the Federation into a new conflict, giving the Star Empire a chance to strike at its longtime rival while in a vulnerable state. If the Romulans did decide to make a move, the Federation wouldn't be able to rely on its alliance with the Klingon Empire, and Starfleet's own forces had been depleted during the war more so than most politicians cared to admit, so replenishing the fleet became a top priority. Much of the Starfleet Admiralty were vocal about wanting to focus on building new Sovereign-class starships, but their size and complexity made for a lengthy and expensive construction time. The Sovereign-class also had a high crew requirement, so crewing a large number of these ships with capable, experienced personnel would be difficult with the size of Starfleet's reduced post-war officer pool. A compromise was proposed by the Starfleet Spacecraft Design Advisory Commission. Begin construction on a fewer number of Sovereigns, but place priority on developing a new, smaller class of starship, one that could utilize some of the modern developments from the Sovereign class, but at a lower tonnage and smaller crew requirement. This would mean Starfleet could launch more new ships at a faster pace, allowing for a larger overall presence along the Federation's borders. This led to the development of the Excalibur class, the first of which would launch in 2382. While officially classified as a light survey cruiser, the Excalibur continued Starfleet's tradition of excelling as a multi-role mission platform. With a standard crew complement of 250 personnel, its duties ranged between anything from performing survey missions out on the frontier to anti-piracy patrols. The class quickly became quite popular, not just because of how well it performed its wide range of duties, but because of its resemblance to the renowned Constitution class of the previous century. Excalibur was seen as a modern take on the classic hull arrangement. Because of this, not only were positions aboard Excalibur-class starships highly sought after by recent graduates of Starfleet Academy, but the class was also featured heavily in Starfleet recruitment material and even in marketing for interactive holonovel dramatizations of Starfleet service. After news broke that the Romulan sun was collapsing into a supernova and the Federation began planning the evacuation of Romulus, Excalibur-class ships were invaluable in surveying suitable worlds to relocate Romulan evacuees. After the destruction of Utopia Planitia in 2385 and the cancellation of the Romulus evacuation, many of these ships were used to patrol the now-collapsed neutral zone for pirates and other rogue elements looking to take advantage of the chaos. The Excalibur class would go on to prove to be a huge success, but there were some in the Admiralty that were initially hesitant to fully embrace the new light cruiser, mostly by those who were old enough to remember the debacle that was the Vesper class. Like Excalibur, Vesper was a light cruiser that was designed based off of a larger capital ship, this one having been designed in the early 24th century in tandem with the Ambassador class. The goal with Vesper was to make a new ship with all the capabilities of the older Excelsior class, but in a smaller space frame with a lower crew requirement. Vesper utilized some of the advances developed for the Ambassador class, like the new strip-style phaser emitters, though to simplify its construction, it used the same warp coils as the Block II Excelsior. Unfortunately, Vesper suffered from its association with the Ambassador class. The Ambassador prototype was forced to undergo a complete redesign after several of its revolutionary advances proved to be too ambitious for full production. This caused a massive scandal for Starfleet around the ship and any associated projects, which included the Vesper. Because of this, plans to refresh Starfleet's cruiser force with new Vesper-class ships were cancelled in favor of more Miranda and Excelsior-class ships. Despite the scandal, the first and only run of Vesper-class ships proved to be quite reliable, and many had long service lives, their crews taking pride in their esoteric Vespies. Fortunately for Excalibur, it never had to go through an issue like this. The Sovereign class had already proven to be a very capable design, and the association between the two only made Excalibur that much more well-received. As tensions between the Federation and the Klingon Empire rose following Chancellor Jim Pock's rise to power in the early 25th century, it was becoming clear that another war between the two powers was inevitable. Starfleet knew that if any sort of conflict were to break out, Excalibur-class ships patrolling the border would likely be the first to face off against Klingon raiding parties. There were concerns among the Admiralty that the light survey cruiser, being roughly 2 decades old at this point, would struggle in contending with the newer classes of bird of prey. Instead of developing a whole new ship, however, Starfleet engineers took inspiration from the pages of their own history. In the early 2270s, Starfleet implemented the Total Modification Program to revitalize the fleet with modern technology. This led to major refits of many existing starship classes, including but not limited to the Miranda, Pioneer, and Constitution. The Constitution II class refit inspired the idea of refitting the Excalibur class with modern technology in a similar way. Not only would this extend the service life of existing Excaliburs, but it would also be faster than developing and constructing a totally new starship class, allowing the Federation to be better prepared if the Klingons did decide to declare war. The Excalibur class was to be completely overhauled and refitted with a number of technological advancements made for the Odyssey-class starcruiser, much in the same way technology made for the Sovereign class had been used in Excalibur's original development. The end result was designated as the Exeter-class light cruiser refit, which was designed not only to give Starfleet's light cruiser force a better chance of fighting off the Klingons, but it also finally made a ship that filled the role that originally was supposed to go to the Avenger class. Avenger was originally planned to be a lighter companion ship to the Odyssey class, but never really fell into that role due to various design decisions, like an overpowered weapons array, an ablative hull generator, and a cloaking device. While Avenger would go on to carve its own path in the conflicts yet to come as a renowned battlecruiser, it left Starfleet without that budget Odyssey class it had originally been wanting. A modern multi-role platform for small-scale missions that the enormous starcruiser would be considered overkill for. Exeter would turn out to be the perfect fit for this missing element within the fleet. While most of the existing Excalibur-class line would eventually be refitted to Exeter specifications, there were still a few of the original configuration active in Starfleet by 2410, still patrolling the Federation frontier and doing whatever needed to be done even through the Iconian War. The Excalibur class was first introduced in Star Trek Online, which launched on February 2nd of 2010. Excalibur was one of the customization options for the playable Tier 2 cruiser, and the ship was also featured on Star Trek Online's original box art. Unfortunately, I was unable to figure out who the original artist behind the Excalibur class is. I did ask Star Trek Online's current art director Thomas Maroney, but he was unsure because the ship was made in a time before he even started working at Cryptic Studios. So I can only assume it was designed by someone on Star Trek Online's original art team. Much later, Excalibur's design would be revamped to more closely resemble the Sovereign class design style by Kelly Perry, which would go on to be modeled by Virtuous Games and added to Star Trek Online in 2022. It's a similar story with the Vesper class. It was originally launched with Star Trek Online, it was another costume usable for the Tier 2 cruiser, but I have no way of knowing who the original artist was because this was before Thomas Maroney's time, so it was likely someone on Star Trek Online's original art team. Vesper was also revamped around the same time as Excalibur was. Its revamp meant to more closely resemble the Lost Era design style, its concept and model both being done by Virtuous Games. The Exeter class was added to Star Trek Online in November of 2011 as a Constitution-class variant in Star Trek Online's own 25th century design style, which was based off of the Odyssey class. It was designed by Jeremy Matson and modeled by Adam Williams. Exeter would also later on be revamped, but its revamp wouldn't change the design style of the ship like it did for Exeter and Vesper. Its revamp merely intended to bring the ship up to modern visual standards for Star Trek Online. Exeter's revamped model was also done by Virtuous Games, with some fine-tuning being performed by Thomas Maroney before being released into Star Trek Online in 2024. Now, with all this talk about the Excalibur class, I'm sure this ship came to mind for plenty of you. This Excalibur class is actually an old fan design and has never been featured in any official licensed Star Trek media. Now, I'm sure plenty of you are rushing to the comments to yell at me about how you use this ship all the time in Star Trek Armada or Star Trek Bridge Commander. That's because this ship was often featured in a lot of different mods for older Star Trek games. But none of those mods were officially licensed, they were all fan-made. So just because you put the ship in there with a mod doesn't change the fact that it's not part of the original game and therefore is not a licensed Star Trek ship. But yeah, anyway, the ship doesn't really have anything to do with this lore video, it just happens to share the same name. But I figured at least a few of you are going to bring it up anyway for that merit alone, so I figured I'd just nip that in the bud. So yeah, this has been my lore video on the Excalibur class, as well as some of the other related ships from Star Trek Online. If you like this video and would like to see more lore-based content on other ships or anything else to do with Star Trek, be sure to let me know down in the comments below, and while you're down there, like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. If you would like to further support the channel, you can hit that join button to become a member, or check out the merch store, or check out any of the affiliate links in the pinned comment. If you're ever shopping on the Epic Game Store, be sure to use my content creator code STU1701. Any of these really help me out, and I really do appreciate it. Either way though, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.